of the Yarmouth Historic Commission, and I'm going to begin our meeting by taking a roll call for quorum. George Thama.
Here.
Jack Duggan.
Here.
Bob Kelly.
Here.
Here, everybody's here. Quorum present. I'm going to call our meeting to order at 10 o'clock. I'm going to ask our moderator, Grace, to explain how our remote participation will work before proceeding. Yes.
As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, all town buildings are closed to the public, and the February 25th, 2021 Historical Commission Town Seal Subcommittee meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Grace Rogers, and I'm the Office Administrator for Yarmouth Historic Commission and will be serving as the moderator for this virtual meeting. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. Persons who would like to view or listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by watching this virtual meeting or dialing in to the number provided on the notice of meeting. We will also post a recording of the meeting on the Town of Yarmouth website as soon as we are able to. Please be patient as we work to overcome any technological challenges within the virtual meeting. For all meetings, to reduce confusion during the meeting, all audience participants of the virtual meeting enter the meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or moderator. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. All votes must be roll call votes. After a motion is made and there is a second, the chair will ask for a roll call vote. For applicants and presenters will be made temporary panelists in order to share their screens while giving their presentation. All presenters and speakers need to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation when speaking. Non-presenting applicants can use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The moderator will unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak. For public participation, comments or questions from the public will be taken at the discretion of the chair. Members of the public may speak by selecting the raise hand button or waiting for the chair to call on them to speak. If you are dialed into the number provided on the notice, you can press *9 on your phone to indicate that you would like to comment. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record, and then provide their comment each time that they speak. I'll now hand the meeting back to the chair. Thank you.
Grace, and I'm going to hand the running of today's meeting over to George. So take it away.
Good morning, SEAL team. How are we doing today?
Doing good.
Booyah! So what we're going to be doing today is we have Paula Peters, coming up. I'll give her a call, and it will ask, each of us just to, identify yourself and, let her know who's on the call. And then after Paula will go through the draft of the PowerPoint and talk about that, and then talk about next steps. So any questions, comments before we get going? Okay, I'm going to share a screen with the SEAL imagery just for us to have it frontal lobe.
Hello.
Good morning, Miss Paula.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Pretty well. How about you?
Not bad. I was just taking my dog out for a little training walk, but I'm heading back into the shop right now.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Would you like me to call you back in a few?
No, I'm right at the door here.
Okay.
So, yeah. be of assistance.
Okay, so I have you on speaker, and
Okay.
the committee is, meeting via Zoom. So I'm going to ask each of the members, there's 4 of us, just to introduce themselves, and then what we'd like to do is just talk about the native imagery that's on the currently on the town seal. We've seen some of your comments in the newspaper, relative to teepees, etc. So, just anything you'd like to amplify on that.
I just think that, well, what's there now is just historically inaccurate.
Okay, sorry, Paula. Let me have the team introduce themselves, and then we'll
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
we'll get to it. So, Bob.
Yep, hi Paula, my name is Bob Kelly. And I am a Yarmouth Historic Commissioner and current president of the Historic Society of Old Yarmouth.
Hi, Paula. Jack Duggan here. Thanks for sharing some time with us this morning. Appreciate you doing that.
Grace.
Hi,
Good
Paula.
morning. I'm Julie.
Administrator. Oh, go, Julie.
Sorry.
Sorry, Julie.
All right, I'm Julie Mockabee. I'm the chairman of the Historic Commission, and Paula, we're really glad that you're here today. Thanks for sharing with us.
And Grace.
Sorry, Julie. I'm the office administrator, Paula, for Yarmouth for the Historic Division, and my name is Grace Rogers. And thank you so much for being here today.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, Paula.
Okay. Well, I guess I would first want to thank all of you for taking the time to review the town seal in a critical way and try to apply some cultural sensitivity and accuracy to what represents your town. And so in the communication that I've had with George and others, it's really been a matter of just confirming that, well, of course, a TP is not something that would be indigenous to this region, and therefore that's pretty inaccurate. Excuse me. And if, in fact, as your town seal, you want to represent the indigenous history as well as the colonial history, you would want to do that in a way that was more culturally accurate and sensitive to the culture as well.
Okay, and so from a specific standpoint, the caricature of the native person on the seal, I'm curious, there's a red robe that is on the caricature, along the right shoulder down to the ground. Is that historically accurate?
Well, it probably represents, perhaps whoever was designing this, maybe it was by accident because they certainly didn't know much about the housing, but it would be accurate to have red cloth. That was something that was commonly traded in the region, was red cloth or red coats. A red coat was once given to the Massasoit Usaniquan as symbolic of his stature and in his honor. And red cloth was very common. So whether or not someone would be wearing it as a sash over their shoulder, I don't know. The feather headdress is probably inaccurate because the feathers are going up in the back. It appears anyways, going up in the back of this person's head, where it would be less common to see a feather headdress sticking up on someone's head. And I'm told that this is because here in the Northeast, where it's more of a woodland area, something like that would be, in the forested areas could get caught in trees, or if they were traveling through the brush, it would not make a whole lot of sense to have, these elaborate headdresses sticking up. Although it almost looks like it could be what we call a quill roach, which would be an accurate headdress, but it's a little high for that. So I'm not sure what you're thinking of doing, whether you're thinking of just making some minor adjustments to this image so that you continue to have your branded image without any inaccuracies. And if that were the case, maybe to change the headdress and change the style of the house would be sufficient.
Yeah, I mean, what our plan is to, and recommendation would be to just start anew and, develop something based on input from, the native people, from town residents and so forth. So what we're doing at this stage is just to collect data and indicate any of the inaccuracies to the select board. So that's kind of the the plan as now.
Sure.
And so
go ahead.
Bob raised his hand. Bob, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Paula. This is Bob Kelly. I spoke with Marcus Hendricks a little bit about this, and he said he thought that the bow was a little tall for what
That could be true as well.
It's interesting to note that in the bylaws, the housing was called wigwam. So the designer and/or engraver depicted the wigwam as a teepee. So that is something that was done actually Cape wide, and where there are no what we would consider roundish lower structures in any of the town seals in Barnstable County. But it's interesting to note that in the bylaws description, it says wigwam.
I missed the last part of what Bob said.
Oh,
Interesting to note that it's in the bylaws, and then I missed it.
that it's called a wigwam, and that this across all the towns in Barnstable County was interpreted as more of a what we would call a teepee than a lower, rounder structure.
Right.
So a lot of it was up to the interpretation of the designer.
Right. So, which was an inaccurate interpretation.
Right.
Wigwam is a term that is an Algonquin term that refers to a home in the Algonquin. There's a great many dialects of the Algonquin language. In the Wampanoag language, we have determined that our term for the home is witu, and that's the word that we use in our language reclamation as it stands now. Either way, a witu or a wigwam has a similar dome. It's a similar dome-shaped structure, and it is nothing like a teepee. So there are bylaws or descriptions that were written years and years ago. I don't know when these bylaws are written that you're talking about. But if they're talking about a wigwam, they're talking about a structure that is a dome-shaped structure, more often than not covered with mats or bark, and it's not a teepee. So I don't know, if everybody's doing it and everybody's doing it wrong, they're still doing it wrong.
Right.
I'm not sure what point you were trying to make other than all the towns were doing it wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I think my point was that it was written probably more correctly than it was applied.
Exactly. The terminology was correct. And that, you have to imagine too, I don't know when this seal was made. Do you know what year that was?
Yes, it was February of 1894. The bylaws were adopted by town meeting with that description. So
And when was the town seal made?
the first reference that we found of the reference was in February of 1895. So it was developed between 1894 and 1895.
Yeah. So I cannot tell you why they chose to depict it as a teepee, but they did, and it was incorrect.
Right.
And sort of everybody followed suit after that. I'm not sure, how I can help you beyond, telling you what I've told you already.
I have one.
You would do. Go ahead.
Yeah, one more question, how you can help. Pine tree, there's a large pine tree in the seal. And is there a Native American significance to having the pine tree, do you think?
Well, there's significance in our creation story to the white pine, but I don't think that is something that the town of Yarmouth needs to refer to.
Right.
That's great. So this has been very helpful, to be able to discuss and hear your comments, and we really appreciate your time. And let me just check with the members to see if there's any other questions. Yes, Grace?
Hi, Paula. I just want to hear your thoughts on the use of the word Matacuse, just because there was a question earlier on in our earlier discussions about the linguistics and use of that.
I'm sorry, I could barely hear what she was saying.
So what Grace has asked is your comments on the word Matacuse on the seal, because there was some, questions early on about the appropriateness of that.
That's something that I would not be able to answer for you, to be honest. It's something you may want to go to the Wampanoag language website, and you can ask for consult on that through the Wampanoag language program. And I believe it refers to the village of the region. But for further consult on anything language, I would go either through Jessie Baird, but I know she is insanely busy, and it would be probably hard to get her attention. But yeah, that would be the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Program has a website. You can go onto the website. There's translation requests. And if you go to the translation request portion, you can enter in a translation request that would also include, is it appropriate to call, Yarmouth by this name? and they would answer for you. But I believe they only meet quarterly, which means that there's something coming up, I think, pretty soon. And if I were you guys, I would do that pretty quickly. And, you know, in order to get an answer in a timely fashion.
Great. One last question, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Paul. It's Bob Kelly again. I spoke with Devin Wixon. I don't know if you know who he is.
I do.
And I asked him about Mattakese, and he referred to Mattakese set, which is how it was written in Daniel Gookin's writings on when they took the census of the Christianized Native Americans. And he said it refers to Big Sky country, where the ground meets the water and there's no obstruction. That's what he said. It has a couple of meanings, but basically he thought that's what it meant.
Right. Well, if you want to, you know, refer to what his interpretation of it is, that would be fine as well. Or you could get a more official interpretation through the Wampanoag Language Reclamation Program. And that's what they're there for. And, you know, they will, they'll be the ones to answer that appropriately.
Excellent. Thank you. And just, I get the last question, please. And just, could you counsel us on going forward when we get into the development stage? And I know you just mentioned your members are very busy, and I can just imagine that. What's the best way to, you know, receive some comments on the development process going forward for, you know, a tribal representative?
If you want, once you've developed perhaps your idea or your draft of what you want the seal to look like, and you want to run it by the Wampanoag Advisory Committee, there is now, we originally assembled, as you know, for the purpose of Plymouth 400, and the Wampanoag Advisory Committee is continuing on its mission, even though we've finished with the work of the Plymouth 400 and the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower. It became clear to us that we needed to continue for just this kind of purpose. And it would be something that we could bring, we meet monthly on Zooms now, and it would be something that we could certainly bring before the committee and have the committee review it and either thumbs up or thumbs down it, or give you feedback. And that would be what I would recommend that you guys do. And it would be simple enough for us to just put it on our agenda, you know, once you're ready for it to be reviewed that way.
Perfect. That's great. That'll work out, I think, nicely. Well, thank you once again.
Sure.
And are you up in Maine now?
You know what? I ended up not having to go to Maine.
Oh, cool.
So I'm in my shop restocking and getting ready to reopen on Saturday. So.
Oh, excellent. That's good news.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a million. Be safe.
All right, good luck. Thanks, and good luck to all of you.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
That was great.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that was just what the doctor ordered. So this works out well. Any other comments? I don't hear any. So great. So let's just, for discussion purposes, so I wanted to put together a series of slides, and you know, and the process that I developed these were pretty much frontal lobe. You know, there's please, there's no rhyme or reason at this stage. I tried to have some kind of, form to follow. And so don't, intend to have a lot of conversation on it, but just, if you have any immediate comments, that would be great for the record. Bob Kelly?
Yeah, it's fine. We'll go through this. I just wanted to make a comment up front.
Sure.
I read through all the 66 reference pages, and I read through this PowerPoint. And in the 66 pages was everything pretty much that we had sent to each other over the last month or so. I looked at this at the table of contents page on the PowerPoint, and I'm thinking that in what we submitted collectively, there's a lot of redundancy. So Jack might have presented something that Julie researched and presented, or that I presented, or whatever. And so I got to thinking about this, and I thought that an order of progression, using George's as a base, but taking it one little step further, is to have an introduction, the Mass General Law directing the town, having the town design and the imagery with Paula Peters' comments at this point, then talk about the Massachusetts seal, because this really is about the Yarmouth seal, and introduce the Massachusetts state seal changes and reasons after Yarmouth is presented, then other town seals, and showing all the seals with comments, changes in those seals that have actually taken place, and proposed changes, and then a summary. And this way, we won't cross over redundancy. And this is just my thoughts I'm throwing out after reviewing all the information. The only piece we were missing was Paula Peters' comments, which are really important. So that's really all I have to say.
Miss Julie? Thanks, Bob. Those are good comments.
Yeah, this is Julie. Yes, Bob, I actually agree. When I had sent initially like my outline for the seals in the news kind of thing, Jack had given me the same comment to put like the Yarmouth or the Cape seal information before anything else in towns outside of the Cape, to keep Yarmouth and the Cape more as the main focus, and then everything else as more just like secondary backing information. And I reorganized everything to follow that guideline as well. So I think that makes sense. So yes, I agree.
Because I think, this is Bob again, I think we're closer than it would lead. I think we're closer because I know what I produced is particular to setting a precedent. And I don't think it crosses over anybody else. And so I'm thinking that we go back to, we pick a couple of people to make the right arrangement, but we also ask the contributors to summarize, recontribute the essence of what they wanted to contribute and the reason, and that will help define the slots. And then we can take out all the one or two folks can take out the redundancies if they're in there, and then create more of a give a different result. That's all.
Bob, this is Julie again. Yeah, I agree. I know that some of the information on my description about the state seal was in George's outline, and some of it crossed with stuff that Bob had researched. So we just need like one description of the state seal and then one description of Yarmouth, including everybody's information, but all compiled into one area. And I think, George, I like your PowerPoint with, like, it makes it much easier. It's more brief, and it'll just highlight each section, and then we can just put the really important items in there. And then obviously someone will be presenting this, so if you need to go into, we obviously have all the backing information, so someone could easily answer a question or expand on whatever you've got bulleted or highlighted here. So I get.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Julie. Yes, I think we talked early on that would be accumulating a lot of information, and so my goal was to, and akin to our brainstorming session, I looked at each person's research and input was like a sticky that we're putting up on the wall. So this 66-page document is the accumulation of all of those stickies. And so yes, we're going to have duplication. And and we talked about the fact that we would have a lot of information and would probably want to look to do an addendum or whatever we call it, which would give further information and context for people who read it, AKA the select board and so forth. So, so this is good. Jack, any comments?
Yeah, I take what Bob said and Julie said. I read the document as what you just described, George. This is what we had all sort of contributed over time, and you pulled it all together in one place. We had talked earlier about, I think we talked about a bibliography at some point. Maybe I'm just adding the word my own, but we talked about something like that would sum up what we had collected. I think Bob's right about the point about a better organization of the raw data that goes into the slide presentation. I would like to suggest that we don't try to revise what, George, you just pulled together with all the documents. That would just, if we start revising that, it's going to make more work than what I'm going to suggest, which is an alternative. Bob had, since Bob, you suggested this, maybe you'd like to take a crack at it. You had some subject headings, subheads, to put our basic documents in some kind of an order, in the order you described. Maybe that's the best way to go through this, is start a new document, pull from the 66-page compendium George put together in the order that you talked about. I would ask all of us to think about this question. So we take Bob's outline, for example, and put it together like that. Who's the audience for this? Because if you end up with a 50-page document, it's great for a background record for somebody who's looking at us 25 years from now or 50 years from now. But I don't think the selectmen are going to read 50 pages of it. The selectmen are going to concentrate on the PowerPoint slides and that. So, but who is the audience for this, for the revision of this compendium?
good questions, Jack. And early on, we had, a discussion of setting up on the town website, similar to what we did with the Indian Memorial information, that Bob's initial research or, firsthand research with the same issue of, well, who's going to read this? We've done a lot of work, we've documented a lot of things, and for posterity, I think it's important that we have something up on the website. So good point, Jack. I did put a call into IT. I will follow up, but that's what I would suggest where this would go. And
that's a good suggestion. I think it may be that there'll be an audience of 12, but it's important that we have in one place where somebody can refer to it what we based our presentation and recommendations on, and it also shows the work that we all put into this, that to come to wherever we end up here.
Yep. Thanks, Jack. Julie, Grace, and then Bob.
Just in terms of posting on the town website, perhaps we should wait after we go to the select board about that, just so we have something that, I don't want to, I like the idea, obviously, because public information, but I just don't want anything to be posted that the select board is not aware of and that they don't know of, because it should really be an official presentation at a selectmen's hearing before we post it in one area.
Yep. Good point, Grace. And what we did when we were developing the Indian Memorial website, it was set up, but not public. So it was only available to certain individuals who were doing the research and doing the input, and that would be the process, so that it's organic, would be up there. And once it's ready for prime time, then we would, release it officially. So good point. That would be the plan. Bob?
Yep. Our audience is definitely the select board.
Right.
That's who it is for what we're doing right now. And really, they're looking for our recommendation to change it or not to change it.
Right.
And we can have a nice detailed something written that we can lay in front of each of the select board, and we then can have a PowerPoint that we can speak to. And each one of us could get up and say something particular to our part, or we can have one person do it all. But in order to keep the PowerPoint digestible, there would be a lot of talking points. You present the bare bones, and then there would be talking points to the bullets. That will keep it not too long. And if they wanted to delve into the detail, they would have it in writing in front of them.
Right. And Bob, good points. And I think we had discussions. I'm happy to do it as one voice, I think, which was suggested. And then if there's more of a detailed answer, then I would defer to the committee member who carried the weight on that issue. And what I would ask each stakeholder, once we agree on the on the slides, to provide me with 3, 4, 5 talking points that I would have to reference to. So that we have what our narrative is that we want to relate. So that would be a suggestion. Julie?
You kind of took what I was going to say. So yeah, I was going to say that yes, I do think that we should have one designated person to be in charge of the presentation, and then like you just said, just have us all there as backup if needed with our specialty information if we need it. So yeah, that's what I was just going to say. That's
Right.
the way to go. It makes it more streamlined, and there's one main person to focus on, and it would make it quicker, and we're not boring anybody.
Thank you. Bob Kelly?
Yeah, this is Bob. Jack, would you like to work with me on this?
Yeah, I've got another fish on the that I'm frying here, Bob rather. I'm trying to get the RFP together or an RFQ together for the archaeology recon survey. Send me. I'll say yes with an asterisk. Send me, if you would, please. Send me what you just laid out orally for the outline, the subheads for an overall document mash, and then I'll try to start getting my head around it, and we can do that. Probably better, Bob, if we talk on the phone. It's easier than sending emails back and forth to each other while
we could do a Zoom. And Julie, would you like to be part of that, or you want to?
Yeah, I'll help. I like to edit and organize, so yeah.
Okay, so I'll set up. I've got the HSOY Zoom, so I can set up a Zoom if you like.
Sure.
Okay.
Is that doesn't constitute a public meeting, does it? Three of us?
Grace, I wouldn't think so, where it's informational. We're not voting, we're not making any decisions. You know, it's preparation. So yeah, I mean, good question, but I think we're covered there, right?
All right.
Grace?
Yeah, as long as nothing is being, like no formal judgments or votes are being made, nothing's being deliberated, if it's just gathering information and preparation for a meeting.
Okay, so I'll send out, both of you send me an email on your availability, and I'll set up a Zoom meeting for us.
Okay.
Great, thanks, guys.
Hey, George.
Yep.
I just put my oar in the water too, so it's unanimous. I'm in complete agreement with one speaker, and the rest of us sit there unless called upon. All of this is going to be, whatever we do before the Board of Selectmen is going to be dictated by the amount of time allotted to us.
Right.
So it's going to be either 15 minutes or 30 minutes. I can't see anything, everything always, it's likely things run over at those meetings, but we got to think about it in terms of 15 and 30-minute segments right now, and they'll tell us how much time they want to give us when we ask to be put on the agenda. But that'll dictate a lot of the length of the presentation, how many slides you're going to use, all that kind of good stuff.
Yep, absolutely. And just another housekeeping issue, the slides, there's no right of authorship there. If you want to change one of the slides, then please do. And, create it. You can save this and then delete everything that's not yours. And if you update a slide, just send it to me, and I'll incorporate it back into to a master. So, again, please have fun with it. So, so let's take the last 15 minutes and just scroll through the slides, and if there's any comments, fine, but we don't have to be exhaustive here. Julie, please.
Yeah, George, I just have one comment. I know one of our main reasons for having a meeting today was so that we could make sure that we had something to give to the rest of the commission for our next meeting.
Yep.
What exactly are we planning on giving to them? Are we looking to send them an overview with the PowerPoint, or are we looking to give them the larger document?
No, good question. I think I'm with you that it'll be an overview. So I thought, we could present the cleaned up PowerPoint that we can scroll through and with not a lot of detail.
We did want everybody to have something ahead of time so that they could be
Yes.
familiar with it. So I don't know if everybody, I mean, I'm assuming everybody can open the PowerPoint, but we would need to make sure. And if not, we would need to maybe have a backup that we could send as a PDF or Word document or something.
Why, can we, do we want to wait a little bit a couple of days to clean this up? Or do we want to?
We have plenty of time because the meeting is March 11th, right?
Correct.
But when's our next meeting so that we can?
Well, why don't we do that at the end, Bob? We'll figure it
Okay.
out. Okay.
No, I didn't mean the seal. I meant the Yarmouth Commission.
The 11th of March.
March 11th, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep. Okay, so first slide would just introduce who's on the subcommittee, the agenda, just to give them, bullet items of what we're going to be covering. And then there's just a series of important information, whether just referencing the act or showing it, we can decide on that. But again, that's downstream.
We can
Bob,
actually, George,
Go ahead,
we can actually take that whole page and just cut out the part that's needed in there, so it will cut down on the space.
what do you mean by that, Bob?
On the page that you were just on
This one here?
with the details, no.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, so where you have the restrictions,
Got it.
we can taper this down to just the essential of what we need to present there.
Perfect. And again, good suggestion, just do it, send it, and I'll incorporate it. So, and we'll have a chance to look at it as a group, but that's a good editing point, Bob, and it focuses. So, and all right, so this is from Bob's work. There's only 3 of the 5, but I just did this for illustrative purposes and room. So, this is open for, editing, obviously. Again, this was one of the pieces of information. I think this was Jack's. It gives a nice visual as to the Massachusetts seal and some explanations on it. I found it interesting here, the reference about the bow, that representations taken from an Indian shot and killed in Sudbury in 1665. So interesting factoid.
Yeah, also, George, you can see that bow is shorter than the one in the Yarmouth seal. And
yes.
Paula Peters affirmed that the bow would be smaller.
Yep. And then, I just included this for, Grace is looking at the pine tree. When I was doing some research and they changed the flag, it mentioned that, the pine tree was on the obverse of the flag. So, again, significance or not. Here's the timeline, Jack. This is mostly your work, and obviously, want to make sure that I have the dates and so forth. But it gives, it gives in a snapshot how we got to where we are in 2021, and then I reference slides that have information relative to this. Here's the bylaws, typed it so you can read it.
Yeah, that's
Bob?
good.
George?
Yep, Bob?
Yep. One thing I learned today, we can make a suggestion to change the bylaws to read "we too" instead of "wigwam."
Yes, and and we talked about that. I mean, downstream, we'll have to get the bylaws approved by town meeting. So yes, that's one of the steps we'll do is recommend a change in the bylaws.
Yeah, because I think if in our presentation, somehow there is precedence for change, and there's also a misunderstanding across all the towns in the towns in Barnstable County that depicted a TP rather than a we too. And that interpretation should be raised as an issue, a broader issue, and particular to our seal. So.
Right, yep,
Yeah.
good points.
That again leads to back into the bylaws, so.
Right.
George?
And this is, again, Jack's work, which, again, typing what was printed on the bylaw. Bob, Stephen Wing, is he a relative?
Yes,
They're all over the place.
it's Daniel Wing's brother.
Okay, got it.
George,
Yep.
just one, always try to simplify. I take Bob's point about wigwam and teepee and those kind of changes. Maybe we should just consider using the word housing. But think about that as down the road when we want to make a recommendation.
Okay. Duly noted. Next slide, and again, whether it stays in or not, but I think it's a nice piece of ephemeral historical document. Notes the 50th anniversary of pupils in the public schools, and it gives a nice, clear, crisp image of the seal. Again, now we're into Massachusetts acts, and again, to your point, Bob, we can, skinny this down and maybe put it all on one slide. So we'll work out the issues there. Here's an interesting comparison when you look at the 1981 change on the bylaws. The only thing that was added was, this verbiage shall be described as, but everything else is the same. So nothing substantive was changed.
Including the error.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So
It's an example, George, of how people don't look closely. It's false premises. You just keep repeating the same mistake.
right.
And it was, these bylaws are periodically readopted.
Exactly. Yep.
And this just happens, I think, to be the latest one, I believe, in 1981.
Right.
But people just copy down what they saw before, and they don't actually look at the seal to see that it's not what's being described.
Right. And to your point about, errors. So what I did here, similar to what was done at the state, is I just took the terminology from, the bylaws, and then, indicated where the item is, obviously. And one of the things as I was studying this is, the reference to an Indian with a bow and an arrow. It's like, where's Waldo? Show me where the arrow is.
Yeah.
Where is it? Is it hiding behind the robe. If you look at the
Yeah.
if you look at the Massachusetts seal, where is it? Right here. It clearly mentions that it's a bow and arrow, the bow in the right hand, arrow in the left hand pointing down. So, so since 1894, the seal has referenced an arrow, but where is it?
Yeah, so there's 3 mistakes now.
Yep.
Yeah, then that's a question we neglected to ask Ms. Peters. Is that even what does holding an arrow down mean peace? And what does it really mean? Is it significant? And
yeah, well, she'll Bob, she'll get the opportunity to address that because she's on the committee for the state, and for what we're looking at, we're a little more micro than the macro question. So
right, and also she said that that the white pine tree that is significant to the indigenous peoples really has little to do with Yarmouth.
right, and and again, the question Todd Kelly raised he said this looks more like a spruce tree, and I look out in my backyard and we have cedar trees.
Yeah.
And the cedar tree is similar configuration on the leafing standpoint. So, so it's, it's just another point.
It could be the lone tree.
It could be a lone tree. Yeah. We're going to call you the Lone Tree Ranger, Jack,
I think that there's something to that, but you couldn't prove it in a court of law because it's all just conjecture.
Yeah.
But it's still, I think that the seal, we know the outcome of what the seal design process produced in this,
right.
But we don't know the whys and the motivations for it. But I would speculate that just looking at the images in the seal, the attempt was made to combine Native American and early settlers and colonial period images. So, there's a case to be made for, there's a lot of pine trees on the Cape. There were a lot of pine trees on the Cape. It's a Native American cultural symbol, and it could have been the lone tree in that scenario I put together from the early settlers using that lone tree as a point of measurement for their lots. But that's an argument outside of this.
Yeah, and I would suggest, Jack, that we're 136 years out from the development of this, and to try to justify or even say why they put it on there is probably not important to our presentation. So
I would add an asterisk, George. It's important if we can find it out.
yes.
If we can't find it out, we just have to make note explicit. I think it's important for us to make explicit note that we don't know why this particular set of images ended up on our seal, because as of right now, we've got zero information on that.
Point well taken.
Yeah.
Bob
Yeah,
Kelly.
just one last thing. I thought it was interesting that John Sears, who was a selectman and probably one of the older gentlemen of town, felt that the seal was being endearing to the Indians. That's what he said. So, there's a lot going on in that seal. A lighthouse that, you have to really strain your eyes to see. And, I'm sure lighthouses were particularly important in the fishing and coasting industry. And whether they had early lighthouses or not is really, I don't know.
Hey, speaking of background here, just a point that so I can, for the record, we have reached out to other people, John Sears, Bob Lawton, Duncan Oliver, And I reached out to Jane Hibbert, the longtime former town clerk, about a week ago, but I have not heard back from her. So at least I've kind of touched bases. I don't know if she's going to get back to me or not, but we've made the effort anyway.
And that's a real good point, Jack, that you know, we can indicate such when we do our presentation, that, you know, here's what we did, here's you know, research plus reaching out firsthand, you know, feedback. So yeah, great point.
I think actually, you know, while we're talking about this, the previous town clerk, Phil Gaudette, is now town clerk down in Provincetown. I think I'm going to be inspired to make a phone call to Provincetown Town Hall and see if Phil's there and just bounce the same questions off of him. Who knows? You know, it's a way of just covering our bases here. So when the selectmen, we go before the selectmen and they have questions, you know, we can tell them. And, you know, the good part about this is if before April 5th, I think, is the date that the new town manager comes on board.
Right.
If we're on the calendar before then, the interim town manager happens to be a guy named Bob Lawton. So we'll have institutional memory right on the scene, if that turns out to be the case.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're at 11. Let's just quickly go through what we have remaining here. You know, here's here's a slide that you know, covers Ms. Peters' point, you know, a wigwam, TP, and then giving a shout out to HSOY for the turtle Weetu that now is extant here in Yarmouth and is being used, you know, to present the, you know, culture of the indigenous peoples who have been here for 10,000 years. So,
George, just that
Yeah.
you're asking for feedback on this. This is an example here, I think, where you could, for presentation purposes, for the selectmen, you could do away with the text and just keep the graphics
Yep.
as because people. There's actually two audiences before the Board of Selectmen: the selectmen themselves, and then the audience who listens at home or online. And nobody's going to be able to read that fine print.
Right.
So you know, you could. I think this is a great thing to. The three graphics are a great thing to use, but the text is not going to be worth it. You're going to be able to explain it in about a 10-second burst.
Jack,
Yeah.
we'll be able to do some really good things with images in PowerPoint. So
Yeah.
we can put them all into a. It won't look like this.
Okay.
Right.
Well, less is always more on each slide.
Yep. And you're absolutely right, Jack. And I anticipated that this would be in my binder with, so I have the talking points, and you're absolutely right. Be, you know, too much.
So too much. I'll just suggest this now. I just was talking about too much, but I think there's one slide missing, and I think the slide should be called "Other Cape Towns," and it should somehow.
I've got that on the list.
Huh?
I've got that on my list.
Okay, yeah, but your list. We're talking about two things now: the slide presentation and the bibliography, we'll call it. But I think for George's presentation to the board, there should be a slide that anticipates the question that they're going to ask: is what are other Cape Towns doing about this? And we could mention what other Cape Towns have done or are doing about their seals themselves. I found something, and I'll get back to Julie on this when I get a little more data collected. But in addition to towns themselves taking action and Board of Selectmen talking about town seal changes, several towns on the Cape have actually passed warrant articles that relate to advocating for change in the state seal and flag, which we ought to at least know about to be able to share that with selectmen. I think there's 5 towns on the Cape where town meeting has advocated for that. And it's a reflection of sentiment for change in general on Native American images that translates into town seals. But I think the selectmen always want to know what other towns are doing, what nearby towns. So
Thanks, Jack.
That's a
You know,
suggestion.
great points all. You know, the slide that I have up now, I'm not sure if you can see it, does show Cape Cod town seals with the teepee. And I envisioned that this would be one of the slides that Julie would work on and either do bullet points or expand on it to the points that you just made. So yes, there would be, and again, you know, this verbiage there is just for discussion purposes. So whether we do bullet points or there's talking points, then absolutely we'll, you know, include that slide. Summary and recommendations. I skipped by this. You know, I found this information from the National Museum of the American Indian that shows woodland bows, and the bow on the right is 59 1/4 inches, so a little less than 5 feet. If the native person was 5 feet, 5'4", or 5'8", then that would indicate Bob's point that the one that we have is too tall anyway. So again, would just a you know, information that I wanted to put out there. And then this would not be one of our slides unless we're asked about it, because our task is to do research, make recommendations, or on imagery. Now, if there's a question by a selectman, and they say, "Well, what's next steps?" then we could throw this up. But so, and again, just to be conversational, here are my thoughts.
Yeah, I think that's good to have in reserve, George, particularly the part about the Mashpee model, which is the only working model we have for a Cape Town, which actually is making a move to a change.
Yeah,
Right. I think this is Bob. Yeah, one of the after we present the town seal, going into other Barnstable County seals to show them comments, changes that have already been made, because there are some towns that already made changes, but they were minor, and then proposed changes, which is Mashpee. And they are in the throes of that right now. So we're not really the first. And that again falls under precedence.
Yep.
Hey, I got a historical point to make here, since we are the Historical Commission. When you look at all of the town seals, all but 2 of them use the word incorporated. And I'm told by an eminent local historian that incorporation is the wrong word, because when these towns were settled, founded, or quote unquote incorporated, Plymouth Colony had no authority to incorporate towns. That the towns became official later when Plymouth merged with Massachusetts Bay. So according to my source, the word incorporated, while widely used, is incorrectly used. The only towns that don't use it are Mashpee, which was incorporated much later, and the town of Barnstable, which doesn't use the word at all and just says 1639, and that the date the seal was adopted. Every other town, including ours, uses what one eminent local historian says is the wrong word. it's arguing for something I don't want to. It's like a rabbit hole. I don't want to go down there, but
Worth noting.
It is, and thanks, Jack. And that would give us another inaccuracy on the town seal imagery that we have now. So
yeah. If we
but,
get to the stage of redesigning the seal, whether it's tinkering, redesigning, or it's a start anew, it's a point that we should be cognizant of.
yes, absolutely. Thank you. All right, it's 11:10. So I think the only other business we have is let's set up a time for our next meeting. Okay.
Should be giving us enough time to meet together to put together a streamlined outline for the whole commission. So
Right, so if we move back from the 11th, so we would, Grace, when would we want to send something out to the committee with the agenda?
didn't we
Probably
decide
that
on the 8th?
Friday would be good, or that Monday. Give them like at least 3 or 4 days to review it.
Okay, so
Why don't we do Monday?
Monday, the 8th?
Yeah, that gives them 2 or 3 days to digest it.
That Monday for when the package goes out, Bob?
To the rest of the commissions, right?
Right.
And so shall
we
we meet
should-
on the 5th or 6th? Excuse me, 4th or 5th?
Well, maybe what we can do is have Julie and Jack and I meet, and we'll put out to you, George, and Grace what we've got to put together. And when we don't really need to meet, we just need to agree that it's good enough to put in front of the rest of the commission.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can do that. We can make that.
So,
If we can make that determination before Monday, the 8th.
sounds good. And once again, anybody who wants to add or change a slide, please send it to me, and and I'll and to your so that's what I'll be focusing on, and getting caught up with the minutes. And so
what do we got for it? Are we actually going to meet as a subcommittee? On,
I don't think it's necessary.
okay, so
You
Go
and
ahead,
Julie, yourself and I should meet soon. And, try and get some groundwork on any changes we want to make. And then we should send it out. We should be in a position to send it out to George and Grace by Saturday, the 6th. And get their approval. If there's any changes, we have a day to make a change and then send it out on Monday.
Sounds good.
how about we set our deadline instead of Saturday? How about Friday?
You mean the 3 of us?
The 3 of us, yeah.
Yeah, fine.
And then and we can, yeah, the 3 of us, and then you're gonna set up a little Zoom for the 3 of us.
Sure.
Okay.
You
All
let
right.
me know. So let's. I'm sorry to prolong this. Let's just.
Okay.
Today
I'm
is today is the 25th. So I can meet tomorrow. Or Monday.
I could,
Keep in
I can
mind
do
that
tomorrow.
Ms. Mockabee works.
All right.
And she's a
That's
full-time
okay, I can
mom
do-
too.
I can do tomorrow. Monday, I have my little one in the office, so,
What time is good for you tomorrow, Julie?
let me just look at my office schedule, 1 sec.
I can do any time tomorrow, Julie.
So can I.
All right, then I can't minimize this.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. And Grace, just one last question. Are all of the Zoom seal meetings up and accessible now on the website?
They should be, I'll check.
Okay, and I'll check because I want to get these up to date and get them in the, you know, on the website.
Anytime is good for me on Friday, gentlemen.
Okay,
Do you
so
want
in,
it?
how about the morning? How about 10 o'clock?
That works for me.
Okay, I'm
I'll set
good.
up, I'll set up the Zoom.
10 a.m. tomorrow.
Perfect.
See you then.
Okay.
All right.
All right, guys, great work. So with the business done, looking for a motion to send us home.
I move we close the meeting.
I'll second. All in
Aye.
favor? Aye.
Aye,
All right,
aye,
everybody.
aye, Captain.